Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs. It's the Friday show. You know what that means. It's time to dance, dance, dance. And we begin in Chicago, where President Trump's Homeland Security forces are wreaking havoc on the local population. This week, a swarm of federal agents ransacked an apartment building in South Shore. This is how WBEZ reported on it. Quote, armed federal agents in military fatigues busted down their doors overnight, pulling men, women, and children from their apartments, some of them naked, residents and witnesses said. Agents approached or entered nearly every apartment in the 5-story building, and U.S. citizens were among those detained for hours. One resident who lives across the street said she saw agents dragging residents, including kids, out of the building without any clothes on and put them into U-Haul vans, and that kids were separated from their mothers. Another resident interviewed by the outlet said when he returned home to his unit, all his electronics and furniture were missing, his clothes and shoes were thrown everywhere. He has no idea what happened and hasn't heard anything back from the Chicago police. 37 people were arrested. The Department of Homeland Security claimed that the raid targeted members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, because that's what the administration always claims, with no evidence. DHS dubbed its operation in Chicago Midway Blitz. It began last month, and Secretary Kristi Noem has, of course, gotten in her requisite photo ops. She was on the scene of a raid of a home in Elgin that led to 2 U.S. citizens being detained and their 4 roommates being arrested. Last month, ICE agents shot and killed an immigrant in Franklin Park and then lied about it. Silverio Villegas Gonzalez was pulled over by ICE agents on September 12th. The agency claimed an officer was dragged and suffered serious injuries when Gonzalez attempted to drive away, and that officer shot in self-defense. But recently released body cam footage shows the agent right after the shooting talking to Chicago police and saying he wasn't seriously injured at all. ICE also claimed that Gonzalez had a criminal record, but an NBC review of that record found not a single instance of him ever being criminally charged with anything. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker this week cited this new information in the shooting and told reporters, quote, a man is dead, a community is shaken up, and we are yet again left with more questions than answers. Wow, yeah. If only there was someone who could do something about this. Someone like the governor? Come on, JB. Order your pigs to arrest these Nazis. Do it. I just want to see what happens. Now to the genocide in Gaza. Israeli commandos intercepted the final ship in the global Samud flotilla. It means all 42 vessels in the convoy were illegally pirated by the Israelis, and roughly 500 members of the flotilla were apprehended and sent to a prison in Israel. Authorities said they would be released and deported following the Yom Kippur holiday, which ended last night. The Italian government's failure to protect the flotilla and its citizens aboard sparked a general strike on Friday. The largest unions in the country encouraged their members to take to the streets against the genocide. And in Spain, there were mass protests called by the nation's largest students' union. Tens of thousands walked out of their classrooms to again protest the genocide and the attack on the Samud flotilla. Meanwhile, a new aid convoy is now headed to Gaza. The 1,000 Madeleine flotilla is about a week out from Gaza's shores, packed with food aid, medicine, and baby formula. There are at least 9 vessels participating in it, carrying over 160 people from 15 different countries. Obviously, these small aid missions don't stand a chance breaking through the Israeli naval blockade of warships, but they are working to further isolate Israel from the rest of the world, and they're sparking direct action around the world among people desperate to end the genocide. And finally, shutdown day 3 in Washington. Very little sign it's going to be resolved anytime soon. Republicans have instead taken to taunting Democrats with racist memes, depicting them as stereotypical Mexicans with mustaches and sombreros. Trump started all this after his meeting with Democratic leaders before the shutdown. And then here was Senator Ted Cruz giving the same treatment to the entire Democratic caucus. For those who aren't following, which is totally understandable, the Republican Party is accusing the Democrats of refusing to vote for a bill to reopen the government unless it includes healthcare funding for immigrants, which is not true at all. But Republicans are using the lie as a basis that Democrats are all Mexicans. Yeah, it really is just that fucking stupid. These are the people who rule over us. But if Democrats are Mexicans for wanting to protect immigrants, which isn't true, but let's pretend it is, what does that make Republicans who want to protect pedophiles? I mean, Ted Cruz this week was on tape urging his colleagues to stop attacking pedophiles. Take a look.
How about we all come together and say, let's stop murders? How about we all come together and say, let's stop rape? How about we all come together and say, let's stop attacking pedophiles?
Yeah, he really said that. I would have given him the benefit of the doubt and said he misspoke, if not for the fact that his party is trying to protect elite pedophiles right now by keeping the Epstein files hidden from the public. For example, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is acting extremely sketchy by refusing to swear in Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, who won a special election for a House seat in Arizona more than 10 days ago now. And it wasn't even a close race. She won by almost 50 points. There's a reason Johnson is delaying her swearing in, though, and Grijalva knows what it is. She said in a statement this week, quote, "Earlier this year, 2 Republicans in Florida were sworn in during pro forma sessions less than 24 hours after their elections. The fact that Southern Arizona is being treated differently raises serious questions about political motivations, especially since I have pledged to become the 218th signature on the discharge petition to force a vote on the Epstein files." That's right. Speaker Johnson is refusing to seat Grijalva because he doesn't want to be forced to even hold a vote on releasing the Epstein files. It's pretty outrageous. And if I was in control of Democratic messaging right now, I'd lean into it and start posting memes depicting all the Republicans as stereotypical pedophiles. I understand they already identify each other as pedos by wearing red hats. The Department of Energy announced a massive expenditure to revive dirty coal energy production in the U.S. It's described as a, quote, $625 million investment to expand and reinvigorate America's coal industry. Funding will go toward recommissioning and retrofitting plants. In a press release, Energy Secretary Chris Wright linked the dirty energy investments to artificial intelligence, claiming that coal will be, quote, essential to powering America's reindustrialization and winning the AI race. The ruling class is right now spending hundreds of billions of dollars on AI in hopes that the technology will reduce labor costs. Capitalists expect returns on those investments, but they need help getting there. They need energy. AI development data centers consume enormous amounts of energy to operate. These centers are already putting stress on the U.S. electrical grid and increasing prices for working class consumers. A new Bloomberg analysis of wholesale electricity prices found that monthly bills have increased as much as 267% over the last 5 years in areas located near AI data centers. So the coal revival is intended to supply that need, while also enriching some dirty fossil fuel companies that supported the president. I don't have to tell you how big of a setback this is to the already meager efforts being made around the world to prevent runaway global warming. But the potential for planetary destruction isn't even on the minds of policymakers at the U.S. Department of Energy. In fact, they're prohibited from even mentioning it. Politico reported over the weekend that the department's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy sent an email to staffing adding to its, quote, list of words to avoid. They include now climate change, decarbonization, and the word green, apparently. Also included the word emissions, sustainability, clean or dirty energy, and carbon footprint. The email from the agency's acting director of external affairs reads, quote, please ensure that every member of your team is aware that this is the latest list of words to avoid and continue to be conscientious about avoiding any terminology that you know to be misaligned with the administration's perspectives and priorities. Just stunning forced ignorance on the greatest threat facing the planet. If the administration buries its head any deeper into the sand, it'll end up in New Zealand. Look, I'd like to stick around a bit longer and banter with all of you this morning, but I can see our interns are getting antsy, and if I don't release them for the weekend soon, they'll tie me up and beat me. It's happened before. Just relax, guys. Be cool. All right. This week's Rich Dick is Jared Kushner. The president's son-in-law is back in the news. Kushner's role in the White House is growing. He's been involved in the administration's Gaza policy and the latest sham ceasefire proposal that would see his father-in-law installed as a ruler of post-war Gaza under permanent occupation and exploited by real estate developers. The White House was asked this week about the ethical implications of Kushner working on foreign policy that involves countries he's also doing business with to the tune of billions of dollars. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt's response.
How did the White House decide that it is appropriate for Jared Kushner to be working on matters that involve Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, 3 countries that combined have given him more than $2.5 billion for his investment firm?
I think it's, frankly, despicable that you're trying to suggest that it's inappropriate for Jared Kushner, who is widely respected around the world and has great trust in relationships with these critical partners in these countries.
Yeah, that is despicable. How dare you even go there? Kush is a good, clean boy, and he's having billions of dollars thrown at him right now because he's well respected. It has nothing to do with his ties to the White House. Reporters, who do they think they are? Anyway, in another highly consequential business deal that obviously has nothing to do with the fact that he's the president's son-in-law, Kushner is currently shepherding the largest proposed private equity buyout in the history of capitalism. And who would have thought it affects the gamers most of all? The Saudi Public Investment Fund, in a consortium of vulture capitalists led by Kushner, moved to purchase video game studio Electronic Arts, or EA. Company's workers produce some of the best-selling games across multiple genres, from Madden and FIFA, now known as FC, to Battlefield to The Sims. The deal is valued at $55 billion, and it includes debt financing from one of the biggest banks in the U.S., JP Morgan. If it's approved, the Saudis would hold the majority ownership stake in EA, The next biggest chunk would be owned by Silicon Valley investing powerhouse Silver Lake, which is also involved in the deal to take over TikTok. Kushner's firm, Affinity Partners, would own about 5% of EA. Gamers have good reason to be worried about what the easily triggered Saudi ruling family might do to their favorite titles, and also what a bunch of Silicon Valley money hoarders might do. According to the Financial Times, the profiteers behind the Kushner initiative are relying on AI to recoup their investments. Quote, the deal is a bold wager by Silver Lake, Kushner's Affinity Partners, Saudi Arabia's wealth fund and America's largest bank. They are betting artificial intelligence will fuel an entertainment boom and yield major corporate cost savings by reducing production expenses for games. As in laying off workers and hoping computer learning machines will do the labor instead. After buying EA, the Saudis and Kushner and the gang will next try to monopolize the gaming market. This, again, from the Financial Times. Quote, the consortium plans to invest additional money into EA or borrow more money to fund acquisitions. The buyers could also fund large acquisitions of other gaming companies using EA's private shares. Yeah, this needs to be shut down immediately. Buyouts of this size typically attract considerable scrutiny from government regulators, but the Financial Times reported that the deal is expected to be approved easily because of how close Kushner and the Saudis are to the White House. One source told the paper, quote, we are in a regulatory environment that is welcoming of Saudi Arabia. Another source added, quote, what regulator is going to say no to the president's son-in-law? So Jared Kushner is using his White House connections to enrich himself while leaving everyone else worse off, especially the gamers. And for that, he's this week's Rich Dick. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Southern California. It was sent in by Kevin, who wanted to shout out the IUOE Local 12. Enjoy. Thank you, Kevin. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have YouTube and podcast channels, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day, capitalism will fall. I promise it will. But until then, we're going to be right here. See ya next week.